Hello everyone. Let's start today our second part of these introductions of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So the idea here is just to bring some concepts to guide you during this process when you dive into your self-study, right? Because we are talking about a process of or a path that Patanjali codified to investigate the reality and refine the experience of the consciousness, right? So everything I can speak here, every words I can use is just uh, the top of the iceberg. Is just a brief introduction, as like I try to introduce you a friend that you never met before in your life. I can use many words to describe this person, right? But when you met this person, the energy, yourself, the way you're dealing, you're going to have your own impressions, right? So this is a process that requires your own experience. I can have this for yourself. And every words I bring here is to bring this enthusiasm to get connected with this path of investigate the reality, right? Everything, when we understand this approach codified by Patanjali, codified into the Sanskrit words, we can have a perception clear about your essence, right? Describing by in the first moment and in the second verse of the Yoga Sutras, yoga is the suppression of all the fluctuations of the consciousness of the mind, right? So to reach that requires your effort, your own stance of discipline to observe and investigate that reality. But it is beautiful because he brought with through this knowledge, through these fields of knowledge, those sutras, those aphorisms, some tools to you to use during this journey within yourself, right? And more than that, he described the nature of the mind and all the process we're going to cross through while in this process of refined experience in union with the divine, right? So the beautiful thing too, it is sometimes can be codified in different terminologies, right? Oh, complex ways of language. But through your own experience, everything makes sense. It's like just a reminder of something that it is also actually our own nature, right? And this sage Patanjali get this knowledge, in such a pathway to reach there. And we know that mostly of the traditions around the yoga will be based in that codification, right? But we'll change the way we approach the concept. But usually we're going to see this when we talk about Patanjali, we see this the major. We saw the 8 paths of to reach the illumination, right? So I'll briefly resume here. Those 8 paths suggested by Patanjali, this codification, it is started with the yamas and yama, the 5 prescriptions, ethical and moral aspects within a personal identity and the universe. So through those 5 behaviors and ethical moral stances, you can start your journey to refine and suppress all the fluctuations that block yourself to look and contemplate your true nature, the true nature of your consciousness, of your essence, right? So first is those 5 prescriptions with yamas, 5 prescriptions with niyamas. And then we start asana. Asana is the physical postures, right, described by Patanjali, that needs to be firm and comfortable, right? All the complexity of the asanas we have nowadays, variations to developing that develop our flexibility, get us strength, is actually to be able to build a body, a position, a stance that you can be in stillness, firm and comfortable, to go deep into the process of reach your ultimate state of the consciousness, the samadhi. And through this process, we reach the ultimate goal of liberation. Call it by Kaivalya, the liberation of the cycles and all the fluctuations of the reality that block ourselves to contemplate our reality, our own nature. So look at this. Those beautiful words can be just a theory, but if you don't experience it by yourself, it's empty. It's empty. And is something accessible for everyone. This is the reminder, actually. We all can access that through nature, right? It's just a perception to observe the witness beyond the physical body, beyond the mind. There is a particularity of our nature, right? That is now attached to all the fluctuations around, all the emotions, all the elements dancing surround ourselves, right? All the mental attachment of information and stimulations we are surrounded, right? So when we look within, when we started to stop all those fluctuations, to refine our perception, to explore the nature of the consciousness, a lot of things start to happen. A lot of things. And this is what we can learn through Patanjali. What is this nature and what happens inside of us when we started to refine this process, right? So we get attached to, look, it's very common, we get attached to the tools, right? So we understand the beautiful Yoga Sutras of Patanjali as 8 limbs to follow. And we get attached to those limbs too, and we forgot to investigate the nature beyond this, because they are tools. And when we attach of those tools, another type of evolution happens in your perception, right? So when we started to refine this perception, this witness, this consciousness, and establish this state for more and more and more, we will start to get disattached of those fluctuations and then start to become obsolete for our nature, right? And this is something that we need to remind. We need to remind that we are already the highest potential of the consciousness. Everybody has this sparkling within, right? Everyone. But to look at this sometimes require our discipline and require that we be true to ourselves. Look at our reality with truth, not judgment, but truth, and enjoy this path. So this is the path, the philosophical aspects, but also very precise tips that Patanjali guided to us in through this paths suggested by him. And there is many layers to understand this. Many layers. Each one of those aspects can extend in the knowledge until the infinite. Right? This is how a concentrated pill of knowledge works, the aphorism. So every time you go there, you can reach a different layer of understanding, a different way to look at this infinite and absolute reality, because this process never ends. But it is a closed system. Once you understand this, you start to refine your own cycles and get rid of the old cycles, the old habits we already created with the mind attached in a different layer, right? So when we create these new pathways, those new habits is heavier than those habits that actually just create suffer in yourselves, believe or not. An action of silence in peace is strongly powerful. There is a deep impact in feeling yourselves. And sometimes it can be just a flash, just a blink of eyes, 1 second that you realize your identity, that you can contemplate these states, can bring a domino effect in the way we perceive the life, right? Does it make sense? You really can feel this, can look at your experience and identify it. This is the practice of yoga. Look at this. This is the practice, because it's always here, it's all the time here. And the yogi, it is that one that put yourself in that situation, and that's it. You put yourself in to be present, silence, to observe and investigate the reality as it is, right? So can be too much, we can be too distracted by all the surrounded influences, right? So that's why Patanjali suggested this pathway. And look how beautiful. I will try to not complex this, but through this ethic and moral that need to start within yourself and through the world surrounded by you, to be truth, to be honest, to be a discipline, but also enjoy the path and surrender to the experience, right? There is something beyond our comprehension too, that we can just contemplate and experience. But sometimes we cannot just realize with the mind. The mind is also a tool, like a savage, a wild animal that you need to addestrate and can be very powerful to ourselves, right? But most of the time, still in the wilderness, hunting yourselves. So when you start to calm down this mind, and we need to have a behavior, a non-violent behavior within yourselves and the others surrounded, right? Don't be attached to the things, to contemplate the truly reality of life that is completely, constantly impermanence, right? And we are part of it. This is our essence too. When we get stuck in our one idea and one perception about ourselves that limited our experience, that's when we can observe different levels of suffering, right? And this suffering is attached to our belief systems, but also can be influenced by the elements surround ourselves, by our interaction with other people, right? our job, it is to try to refine the way we reacted through all those things. And this way we react is actually habits that we build, the way we grow through our traumas or habits in life, and we don't know in past lives of the consciousness, right? But once we started to look at this and identify those patterns, we start to face different aspects of our nature, right? And this is the work of the yogi. We investigated it as a witness, but sometimes can be very turbulent. The mind is such a fluctuance that, and the body is out of the place, right? So it's hard to be in silence and stillness and contemplate that. So after you have this behavior, that is how we are here together. We are seeking to understand this, right? To experience that reality and share it to that surrender aspect too. When we conquer those ethical and moral behaviors and instances, then we started to work the body with the postures, asana, to conquer a body that can be in stillness, firm and comfortable. When we eliminate all the tension, and then we can meditate into the infinite, right? When we happens, all the duality will stop. You know, when our body is able to contemplate this state of stillness, firm and comfortable, the mind can meditate into the infinite. So that's why the beautiful practice of asanas, right? Suggested by Patanjali. There is no descriptions in Yoga Sutras of Patanjali of the postures, right? Some of them, they say that this is already part of the practice, and he just bring the concept here as the knowledge, as the concept and philosophy behind, will never be forgotten, right? And then when we conquer this body, then we can start the process to regulate the prana, our vital energy, right? So when we conquer this control process of the prana, especially use the mechanisms of the breath, then we contemplate our lucidity. Does it make sense? Lucidity?
What do you mean by lucidity?
Lucidez, Nacho, help me. Lucidez?
Yes, so I think lucidity is a good translation for that.
Yeah, is when you are clear, right? You're completely clear and aware. Maybe two words that help too with this word too. So look, when we can conquer the process to regulate the prana, the vital energy inside the body through the breath mechanism, then we contemplate the clear and aware perception of this reality, right? So we're going to use the retentions of the body. That's why after a while, in the medieval times, the Hatha Yoga has this based on the mudras and also different approach to reach the same goal as Patanjali suggested by. We're going to see this more forward, right? And that's why we started with a different approach, moving the body with Surya Namaskars, right? We didn't say the yamas and yamas in the beginning, right? So why now we're saying that it came in the first, but we didn't this in the first, right? Controversial. I love it. I just love it. But there is a way why. Now we're going to see in the methodology of Hatha Yoga, it changes a little bit the approach. Because imagine, by the time For you to start the practice of the asanas, you gotta prove yourself all those ethical and moral aspects one by one, and then conquer the asanas, and then conquer pranayamas. So it's a step-by-step movement. And the days changed, right? The approach changes through the years, developing the science behind it, developing. That's why Hatha Yoga, we're gonna see, it is a staircase for the highest Raja Yoga, that it is represented by the traditional classical codification of the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, because it is Raja, is the king, and king it is related to the mind, our mind, our highest consciousness, and investigate and understand the nature of this mind. It is the perfect environment to our contemplation of the union with the divine. But sometimes it's tough to reach the mind through the mind, right? And we need to use the body and the movement to activate it, because they are all connected. So keep moving through the asanas and the pranayamas, this regulation of the vital energy of the body. Then we started with more internal aspects of the practice. So asanas, we already studying, right? With our asana lab, beautiful, understanding the body, the alignments, a new perception of this vehicle, that it is already the tool for the self-realization, right? It's our temple. So when we do asanas, we are actually praying within to reach this higher, this ultimate goal, that is this sparkling of creation that it is inside of us. So to look at this process within, right? When we started to look within, this is a particularity too, right? Which means we are disattaching the senses, the sensitive engagement from the outside world, and looking inside and put it inside, right? It's very common to distract our perception for the surrounding world by the lights, by the sound, by the taste, by the smell, by the touch, right? But when we started to look within, this is also a tool for this state of union, for this investigation of the mind. Look within, that everybody says, right? And Patanjali described this as pratyahara, right? Let me put this beautiful name here. Pratyahara. There is many ways for you to translate this word, but when the senses are not in contact with the external objects, then we assume the self nature. Look at this, because then we can control your senses. Start the process to control the senses. This is how you react through it. But first, we need to look within. We need to start this introspective process, right? Or else, it's too much distractions around. That's why to be with the one particularity of the yogi is to feel comfortable alone and in silence, right? It is your moment to investigate your reality. And this step is very important. Pratyahara, the internalization of the senses, right? To control the senses and really contemplate your reality, your own nature. Because when we started to do this internalization, this introspection, then we're going to start to sharpen the mind attention. Now our mind is like this, all of us, right? A big light shining in our face everywhere, right? Doing like this. We want to refine the attention of the mind as a laser, as a precise laser. This is concentration, right? We invite the mind to be sharp in a present moment or in another tool that we can use during this. This is dharana. Dharana. Concentration. Concentration. When you center your consciousness in a delimited area, right? This is concentration. Make sense? If you are here, okay, everywhere, all over the place, and then boom, we focus in a point. And this is an ancient way to practice it. Just focus in a point, right? Or a dot in middle of a circles, right? Is a symbol to practice the concentration. We can look in a specific point. We are bringing the awareness. We are inviting the mind to be aware of a specific point, a delimited area. The mind usually is this all of us, is the light China try to grab everything around it, try to grab all the senses, all the information around and process everything, right? And then now we're looking within. We bring attention to the internal movements and refine the attention of the mind to a specific area. This is the process of concentration, right? After pratyahara, concentration. So, when we do this, when we start this process of concentration, this is another beautiful way to look at this too. When we talk about meditation, right? This word, we created this word for the Sanskrit word called dhyana. That another way to translate it in a beautiful poetical way would be sit in the calm. To be sit in the calm, right? So that contemplative state, we reach this state of meditation, this sit on the calm, in the lotus, right? To be in a pure state of contemplation. Will be active when we keep the concentration for a very long time. Not a very long time, but consists in a continuation of the concentration process. That sounds clear? Sounds clear? So sit in the calm, meditation, to achieve and contemplate the meditative state, it is a continuation of a practice of concentration. So concentration is completely related to meditation. That's why all the ancient practices of the Buddhism, for example, is basically to practice concentration. Right? Once you practice the concentration, the meditative state will become more natural, right? And until a point that you don't do any effort, it is impossible to contemplate, sit in a calm, doing effort. Does it make sense? Right? That's why nowadays we need to do that strongly effort with the body. So when we do the Shavasana, we are relaxed, we laying down in the calm, right? And we can contemplate that. See, but This is a way that to reach the same state. And then after, we can keep this for more time, right? Because when we keep this state, when we keep in that meditative state for a time, then we enter in the next level, of the perception, in the next level of the state of the consciousness, the hyper consciousness, as we know here, samadhi. There's the H here, samadhi. Oh, sorry, E, I. The, the ultimate state of the consciousness. We can call it as a hyper consciousness. So C is a progressive way, and those paths, those limbs, right, are more internal than the previous one. So first we have yamas and yamas, the five ethical and moral prescriptions, right? Your stance and your behavior with yourself and all the universe around it through your actions of discipline, of be truth. When you put yourself in those stances and then we started the work of the body to conquer a body firm and comfortable, to be able to regulate the prana, the vital energy inside the body using the mechanisms of the breath and the holders, the breaks of this, to retain the prana inside the body, right? So when you reach that, then your mind are more sharp. To start the internal process. Your attention is already there. Then you bring all the engagement of the senses. Now that it was in the outside world with the physical world, now you put it inside. Now to look within, to start the process of concentration. Then when we start and keep that concentration for a very long time, then we naturally will enter and started to refine the contemplation of a meditative state. And while we working on it, while we exercise it, we exercise and contemplate this state of sit in a completely calm and peaceful state, then our higher consciousness started to develop in the perception. So when the mind assumes the nature that whose is meditating, look at this, then we empty ourselves of your own nature. Look at how we can look at this in different perceptions, right? But when we look at our own nature and the mind already perceive that nature, we empty ourselves through our own nature. The mind, the consciousness empty themselves with their own nature. What is this? This makes sense? Maybe not. You need to experience. It's just a few words here, just a little hint. But when you experience that, and as I said, can be a little flash of time, and it can happen sometimes suddenly in your life with no reason, right? Like a catharsis that suddenly, boom. And sometimes no, sometimes you can work harder to reach that. Sometimes it can be when you know what, forget about it over that. I'm gonna live my life, and that's it. You know, this higher consciousness is all the time there, and the ultimate reality is the complete disattachment of all of this we understand as a reality. This is harder to describe. You need to experience. And it's not me that guides this, is always was that accessible for us who's seeking for it. You know? That's why it's so beautiful to get in touch with those ancient books while we are trying to learn about ourselves a little bit more, you know? That's why my intention here doesn't, this class uh, doesn't lock, you know, doesn't fulfill the experience as yourself reading the book by yourself and get your own conclusions, right? But sometimes can be a little confused, different language, different translations. That's why I'm enthusiastic to be here, right? And say, okay, try to look at this, it makes sense, right? We are using the language now, a modern way to talk about it, right, through our cell phones. Wonderful, I love it. You know, I'm very enthusiastic to be talking about it because it is something that changes your perception about yourselves, the way we practice it, the way we approach yoga too, right? And the way we look at our life, it is beyond that. It is beyond the tools. It is beyond the terminology we use. It is to literally promote a freedom of our beings to be, right? And this is what we need today. This is why it's so beautiful to have those sacred knowledge kept until nowadays, right? But it is a practice of discipline. It requires that discipline. Sometimes you can just suddenly happens, but to practice this, it is these following steps. It is a practice of discipline that we called samyama, right? These three steps together called samyama. Let me put it here for you. Samyama. This practice, it is internal practice of discipline, right? And when we succeed on this practice, the teaching, the knowledge, it is straight from the source within. Became became just one path straight from the source, right? Because you are working in the discipline, in the internal aspect of contemplation. You don't need somebody outside to bring this knowledge for you, this investigation. You get from yourself. The master is already here, is already there everywhere. We just need to look within. If we are enthusiastic to those paths, this is the yogi who's are able to sit and look and to keep that constantly investigation of the reality, this constantly uh, perception, try to refine that perception, to bring it harmony for the reactions, so, regardless the influences of the elements and the mind sets we created, right? That constant discipline, the path of samyama, right, is our internal process of investigate and concentrate the mind. But you see how simple is that? How simple is that, right? Internal process, okay. Concentration, okay. Keep doing this, you're gonna contemplate a different state. Wonderful. And with this, boom, higher consciousness. Amazing. But sometimes can be hard in the day we live, right? And this is why we have this beautiful tool of Hatha Yoga. We need that power. We need that strong effort. No, the discipline is here. It is here, inherent of the yogi. But we need to do strong efforts. That's why Hatha Yoga, in your own nature, this word Hatha sometimes can be referent to a type of violent effort to do something. It's not a say, okay, just the moon and the sun. That polarity, it is intense. We are living in this. Imagine in that medieval times, everybody cutting their heads, right? You need to put your attention in strong and powerful tools. Those are the powerful tools of Hatha Yoga. But how you can use those tools properly if you don't understand the nature that you want to reach, right? How? Those tools will be empty. That's why the experience, it is important to yourself, to reach that discipline within yourself and to be able to investigate the reality. That's why the Sutras of Patanjali, it is behind all of the traditions. But we common see a very superficial approach of it. We always see like, okay, forget a little about the old book. Or, okay, no, we just have those 8 pathways to, okay, everybody memorize this and this and this and that and yamas and you get there. Why? Why those tools? Why are these for? What we want to reach out. Once you understand this, we understand that is a whole closed system that works to operate in to refine this. And then more in front, we're gonna get more this esoteric and alchemy approach in the medieval times with the resurgence of Tantra, the Hatha Yoga schools, right? But back in time, remember, Patanjali Yoga Sutras was written in a moment, written in a moment, and that philosophy was Sankhya, right? He was Aryan, but the philosophy behind is Sankhya, which means that is a very rational way. Rational is for sure related to the mind approach, right? So there we have almost to a very similar way to look and investigate the science of the mind with Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha, right? They are practically in the same era. So we're going to see these aspects of that moment of the history. Look at the mind and understand, investigate the nature of the mind. That's why it's so beautiful, because nowadays our mind is already wild and we are trying to, okay, use the tools to control the mind and mindfulness and this and that, but we don't know the nature of it. And we don't know who we are. We are not our mind. We are not this body. We are not even those tools. We don't need nothing this. The essence, the true nature is just this. But we are so attached to the fluctuations that we forget about it, right? But no problem. We have those tools and we're going to keep working with our discipline. That's why we are commanders here, right? But it is very beautiful because every time, every new cycle, every new moment we approach it, we're going to have a deep impact within. This impact, it is related to our habits. Let's understand the cycles of the mind, right? And one of the first law of the hermetism, one of the ancient knowledge, regardless the laws of the universe, a beautiful philosophy to be in contact to, the emerald tablets, right? Who's here familiar with this, right? So the first series, the principle of the universe is mental, right? The principle of the universe, the creation of the universe, it is in the mind. The mind, it is this powerful tool of creation, right? So, if everything started from the mind, you can look at this as a detective right now, okay? A detective. If the mind has this particularity to create it, what it came after that? If you fluctuating in your thoughts, for example, if you have a beautiful picture right now of a beautiful and full of flowers, fields, that breeze, and then you are creating that image in your mind. Suddenly, you feeling so good, right? So this mechanism of the mind to create something, now you are smiling. Look at this, how beautiful. So it's already an action to give me this smile that something was started in your mind, and then you have a feeling, and this feeling became so true that we started to behave through it. We started to act through this feeling because the mind projects such a realistic image because it is the power of the creation of this universe. And we have this installed within this technology. So beautiful, right? But can destroy ourselves. We don't know. Just created whatever. So that's why everybody say this is something very responsible to start to refine this process, to look within. So look, if we started through the mind, create and project emotions, then started to behave and create actions. Those little actions create habits. And then those habits is already feeded yourself, creating cycles. Does it make sense? So when you start to investigate the nature of the consciousness, we look at this mind, chitta, when we look at this powerful tool of creation, we're gonna start to observe how crazy it is. Definitely. We're gonna see how we are just automatically respond to the influence of our thoughts, right? So we need to take this suppression and bring it back, the control of it. This is the practices of yoga. That suppression is called nirodha. So the second Yoga Sutras, Yogashita Vritti Nirodha. Yoga, the action of unity with the divine, it is the suppression of the instability of the mind. That suppression, it is taking the control of that fluctuations. So to make it happen, we need to understand the nature of the mind. And the mind, it is one of the most powerful tools we have in this universe. Because it is what created all the universe. The first law of the Hermetism, right? That is something. I'm not just sitting this, mention this very random because they are all related. Those ancient perceptions, they are all related within yourselves, just with different approaches, right? So, but when we start this process of nirodha, of suppression, and this is the beautiful thing that Patanjali also described in the Yoga Sutras. Here just a little hint for you. It started to happen different types of evolution in your way to perceive. Those evolutions are very clear too. One of them is when the duality, the polarity, started to get imbalance. So we started to be affected of the polarity. A lot of people can say, "Oh, you are not empathize. We don't get empathy to be happy or sad." You just look at the reality as it is. This judgment, that polarization also creates attachment with ourselves. So there is a point within ourselves, in our nature, that we can perceive this middle point, right? But sometimes it's harder to reach there. But all those tools that suppress the fluctuations of the mind make ourselves slowly creating new habits, creating new states, and then we started to be able to contemplate these states where the polarity is started to cess, start to stop, right? This evolution through suppression. It is Nirodha Parinama, right? Nirodha Parinama. When we started that suppression, and then we started to contemplate the consciousness, install the consciousness, right? And this particularity too, this consciousness is installed, as we can say, in our karmical or cycle, the cycle of the consciousness. If we imagine that the consciousness has your substance in the absolute infinite, it never ends, right? Never started, right? This is our nature. I'm not talking something out here, not alien. It's all, it's us, it's we, it's I and you. No? So this nature of the consciousness that was always there now is projected by that reality, right? Is using that reality to project yourselves. So imagine how many of those cycles is already agglomerated. Just to put through the study of your life, how many belief systems, how many habits, how many new cycles we already started, right? How many concepts about life, how many uh, talks we get, right? So look, this, all those little habits, all those little mechanisms we created, all these little mechanisms, these triggers of the mind to create emotions, to create new habits that we have. Let's imagine, let's imagine as a collar of pearls. Okay? So every habit, every new habit you create, every new thought you follow, it is a little pearl you add in this collar. Okay? And for each habit, for each one of them, you have a collar, a string to put those pearls. Now, let me know how many we have that are external and how many we have that it is internal. How many actions you have to look within, right? We are very attached to outside world. This is a reality, right? Okay, those are sanskaras, right? Those are the sanskaras. It's a very hard word to translate it. But those habits that are within, like a pattern of the way we think, is a pattern of that the consciousness is already believing that this is the reality we created. But it's not, right? So every time we do one action that it is to fill the collar of the pearl with a new pearl for the string of habits inside of introspective action, those pearls are more heavy than the external ones. Got it? Which means which means, pay attention to this. When we do any action within with introspection, using the yoga tools, meditating, concentration, introspection, when we use all of those tools to reach this state, doesn't matter for how long time we are doing an action, right? It's an action. We are guiding our mind to create this little space, right? Every time you do this, we are feeding a new sanskara, right? Of the consciousness nature within. And these actions, they are more heavy in a good way than all the external ones, because it is related to the nature of the consciousness and in the mind, and create like a new perception for all of the other ones. And there is a moment that is so clear, so present, that your external pearls doesn't match your outfit anymore. You got it? You want a new colors.
That was so awesome. And there was just like something I missed at the beginning because a helicopter went by. I was like, no, I got it, but there was just something at the beginning, and I don't know.
You see how we are very influenced by the external external influence.
The external.
Where was Gina? Where was?
I was just immersed in what you said, but there was like a part where I didn't hear, but I feel like I got what you said. I really didn't want to miss anything. But
Okay,
like
I do briefly
like
what
high level,
I said, right? So when we do those actions and we create habits, right? We are investigating the nature of the mind. So we understand that the mind creates everything, thoughts, imagination, form, shape, sound, access, the absolute infinite, right? When we create this, we get attached by the emotions all these thoughts will make us feel, right? And then when we feel this, we started to move through those feelings, right? If we have a very heavy thoughts, and then we started to look at this, and then we get pissed off, and then you can punch somebody in the streets. Look at the action, right? But every action creates a habit. Every action creates also a reaction, right? This is a law. So when we do this, but we are susceptible for this polarization too, the duality, right? Positive, negative. We are surrounded by that. But if we do actions that are create habits, looking within and introspective actions, those actions will influence all the other ones, because there is no if we that's why I bring the metaphor of the collar with little pearls, right? A string. When you put little pearls, every thought that create this cycle of emotions and habits, and can be just a habit of thoughts, right? You create the habit to think about something, and then when you see you already done, how many times you think about something, and then suddenly you're doing, and you say, shit, literally, and regret right on. It's like you don't think about, but actually you thought. You just don't observe it, because you are thinking all the time. And in some kind of way, you gotta be true to yourself that you choose to do it. Don't play the victim, right? Don't play the victim with yourself. You choose. And you say, oh my God, I don't think about it. No, you know. But you could be sleeping. You could be no aware. Okay, no aware. This because we are humans, right? This is why we need to to welcome ourselves with care too, because we are looking here to refine the experience as a humans, right? If our essence is our absolute infinite light and creation, it's so boring too. So we put ourselves in that limitation, in that limited experience. If we have eyes everywhere in the consciousness, any presence, now we just have two eyes looking forward. We need more eyes to look behind, to look in other perceptions. And this is what makes us as human very special when we share, right? When we are deeply connected as one, because we are different perceptions of the same thing. We have the same essence. We think we are one. Just different eyes looking at the same thing, living a particular beautiful experience to bring it back for the source. So it's the experience of the source already, right? So it's important to joy, to observe the joy of it too, no? And welcome your mistakes. When we look at our mistakes with responsibility, actually, we are growing mature with it. We are literally looking at this with the truth as it is and growing through it. We don't get attached to the suffering to be as a victim. We cannot stand like this. We can't stand like this in our reality. We gotta look and face the truth as it is, as it is, and have the joy to be aware of it, or else we just will be creating new patterns and creating suffering to ourselves and to the world surround us. And we think is not what we want, right? It's not what we, the consciousness want to experience. No one want to experience the suffering. No one, in different layers, in different levels, right? But the awareness is not there. The awareness sometimes it is a particular path for each individual too, and the mostly as we can is to do our best to investigate our own reality. And there is something that no one can do, and there is no moment for one can do it again. Okay, and we need another Jesus to come back, another Buddha or the aliens. No, is our job, is our work of discipline, is our time right now to do it. But we need to bring that beautiful process to investigate and to be able to contemplate the state of our nature, right? And this is deep. No, it's not everybody that want to go deep into it, because it's such a responsibility too, right? Every time you refine your experience, you will facing a different layer that you want to refine, and this hurts sometimes, right? This hurts, but it hurts in a good way, because once we look at this, there's no way to unlook. Doesn't make sense. It is there. It is how it is. This is our experience. And we have this duality, this polarization. What we want is to cess, to stop the influence of it, at least for a second, to contemplate our nature as it is, and this can change our perception. This, but requires our discipline, right? But we're worth, if at least for a second, any time. That's why this, to be a yogi, to be a yoga teacher, is not something that we just do in your mat, right? We say that everything we do in our mat, we see outside, because it's a constantly process. constantly opportunity to be present. Because when we do this, we are refining our experience. We are refining the perception of the consciousness that actually is already here, is already ready to be. And we are we are seeking for. We are those aliens. You know, we are beyond the comprehension. We are already the sparkling of creation. What else we want? You know, but it's tough. It is hard. It's a hard process. That's why it's not everybody that is willing to do this process, and it is okay. But if in some kind of way you bring your awareness to this, we have those beautiful tools to help us. And we are one together in this to share this experience. Because when we look at this, and it is not something that we created right now, it is ancient, the process, kept sometimes needs to be kept in secret, right? Because what else? No, kill those that are spreading this knowledge to connect with the nature and the consciousness. This is demon thing, but because once you're free, who can control you? So those evolutions, those different types of evolution, those practices, it is described in the Yoga Sutras very precisely in a way that once you recognize it, you can't look away. And you can observe those little details in many different moments in the life, right? And that's make you realize that you already are exactly what you're looking for. And that is the ultimate realization. We don't need nothing else. We already are. When we detach of all of those tools, all of those words, all the prana, all the asanas, the yoga stuff, and we are able to just contemplate the reality right now, the present moment. What else we can want? Healthy, right? To be the truly constant enjoy the truly happiness of the reality. That is the impermanence movement and this completely constantly teaching too. But for this, we need to remove everything, all the belief system, all the polarization. Once we started to calm down the duality, when our mind are able to be unidirectional, when all the opposites, the actives and passive influences are neutralized. Look at how beautiful this state of the mind, right? This is the type of evolution we are talking about when we do yoga. It's not just crossing the walls or becoming flight invincible. This would be nice to you can fly like a bird too. But these two on to hold this nature of the mind, it is the true power. That's why Patanjali put those descriptions in the third chapter, the Vibhuti Pada, the path of the powers. Those are the true powers we are looking for. And when these successions of the changes started to happen, okay, we change a little habit here, we change another one, and we change another one, and we change another one, those evolutions started to appear. Those powers that actually evolutions of the perception of the consciousness. The conscious are able now to perceive the reality with the opposite polarity now neutralized, with all the fluctuations now neutralized, right? When we practice the forms of discipline, we understood all the line of time, the past, the future, and the present. It is a relative one, right? This sounds very beyond. right? To use the words to describe what actually it is an experience. It is just the top of the iceberg, right? It's just some hints. Then you can go dive into the experience to contemplate this. But it is something that is part of our nature. That's why it makes sense. But it is not something to make sense, just make sense for the mind. You can understand with the concept, but dive into the experience. Be, it is what we want, right? Once you understand that possibility of the mind, to understand, okay, I understand, okay, the mind loves it, right? Understand, you feel so good, right? You feel in control, but it is beyond that. The evolution, it is beyond that. Suppressing that judgment of the mind, I'm good, I'm nice, I'm bad, I'm feeling this. This is a judgment of the patterns we created. Once this polarization, good and bad, feeling happy and feeling sad, when we can go beyond that to look at the reality, this is our effort of discipline that creates new patterns within and that will promote evolutions in your own way to live life, right? Yes. And all of this do these different practices of discipline, different types of discipline, different ways to reach there that we're going to see through the ages. We're going to recreate this. We are trying our best. When we do this, then everything started to be in this more fine line that we can call as a harmony that is related to the process to be free, right? The freedom, as we can say, as a state of liberation, which means that we have no attachment for those elements that surround ourselves because we are established in the nature of the perception of our true and real consciousness, right? Deep. Tell me, Gina, please.
I was just snapping for that.
So Kaivalya, right? Kaivalya, that freedom of the consciousness, right? And we're gonna see that when the Hatha yogis say about freedom, they use a different term called moksha. And they say, well, they are talking about different things. Oh my God, I'm so confused. I don't know now what I'm doing. Oh my God. They are the same thing looking in different perception. Don't get misunderstood. Use everything as a hint for your investigation, right? That's enthusiastic to introduce those books for all of you. But it's very important too. While you started to doing this, when you started to get this, is it important? Why are you doing? Why you want from that, right? Actually, everybody knows that we want to contemplate that ultimate state, but be aware, right? It's dangerous to be such a shiny light, right? It's important to share, but don't be proud too much of the way you started to look at this, the way maybe the people get interesting for the way you look at the life right now. Because this identification can make ourselves attached in some things that actually we are trying to get rid of it. And then we can start another habit, another cycle that the mind just, wow, I like this so much. I like so much to be a spiritualized yogi. Everybody now looks at me like a guru, and oh my God, right? It's a little, very, very commotional trap, right? And this was written to. So it is a hint to ourselves to don't get stuck in this obstacle too, because once we start, we get attached to this idea, to this concept, to be lisonjeed, no proud, and this okay now everybody devoted. We gonna fall in something that actually you are wishing to get rid of it, right? Patanjali describes this little trap, those little obstacles, when we started the process of the mind too. And this is very important to investigate it, right? A detective, we are not gonna just boom, go into the room and shooting everybody, right? You get all the rings. You observe, you analyze, microcosmic, everything, every step. And we are talking about something that is so settled in our reality, but it is so present, right? The mind. How can we touch? How can we shine the light in the mind to see those details? It requires a lot of discipline, right? But it is those tools. We have those tools. We are doing this. We are this already. That's why we're here studying together. That's why. Well, when we do this kaivalya, right, the state of liberation, the liberation, then we reach, actually, it's so simple, we reach the purity of the true consciousness, the true individual, the true personality of the self. That's it. Look at this, so simple. That what is to be free? What is to be free, right? When you reach your behavior that is actually pure as the nature of the self. And how can be codified? The Kaivalya. It is when you, the Sattva, reach the Suddhi of Purusha. I could say like this, you know? But those terminology, this state is so simple. It's so simple, that's why it's so complex to reach. Oh my God, right? Because we are attached to all those things around, and to contemplate the true nature of the persona, that personality, that incarnation of the light, to contemplate that purity is something so hard that we need to do all of those tools, all of those rituals, right? We born as such a pure as a child, and we cross some tough ways sometimes, but still there, still there. You know, this purusha, this aspect of the true nature of the self, it is connected with the source, and it always be. Just we need to develop in the awareness to contemplate this, right? And it's so simple, but we tend to complex everything with the habits of the mind. That's why you have beautiful practices of the yoga. So all the trail, the path of liberation in the fourth chapter with the Kaivalya, he will describe what is reached through it. We saw that through the practice of samyama, we reach the evolutions that are the parinamas, right? Parinamas. With parinamas, all of those different layers that we refine in our experience goes to increase the capability of the consciousness to be in your own nature. This is the liberation we're looking for, right? But all of this all of these powers of the perception, those cities, can be actually can be born. You already can born with a perception of it. You can develop it naturally through your own naturally through the years, right? And this is a particularity of the yogi. We already are all of this. We just try developing, right? We give our attention to this beautiful practice to self-know knowledge, right? But it can happen for different ways, and Patanjali described it too. We can just born like this, or we can do practices that guide ourselves. We can use herbs to reach that ultimate state. We can vocal things, right? Can pray. We can just do self-superation, you know, or we can work in the contemplation of the discipline practice to guide us in a hyper consciousness state. And all the evolutive transformation will be caused by the elements of the nature, the true nature. Practice, right? Practice is the true nature. So everything is allowed by the nature. Everything, all this transformation is actually part of the nature. Is a particularity. Is in the DNA. But for the yogini, this is already a path. You know, there is no good or bad in this. It's just something that it is, how can I say, favorável. Nacho, help me. Favorável.
Like favorable, I can.
Favorável? Okay, not that far. So you want to see just like this. Okay, this is favorable to me, right? Or no. So I gotta look at this with the true reality to keep moving, to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, keep aware. Every time, every second, you can practice this. You can be present. That's why those beautiful, simple techniques just to observe the breath. We started to practice already. And there will be more. Don't worry about it. So those sanskaras, or the sanskaras we mentioned too, they are related, for example, to our memory. So our memory creates attachments too that we try to relieve. And they have this uninterrupted relation, influence. But we can recognize it too, depending of the time it was happened. The moment, right, the local it happened, everything gotta be identified by the consciousness, right? That's why it's a work of discipline to concentrate, to look at this. So, this is just, as I said, a briefly introduction, right? It is just a tip, just a hint for you to go there on that dive into the knowledge codified by Patanjali, right, through the Yoga Sutras. It is something that we can read many times, reach many layers of understanding, right? But don't get attached just to the superficial aspect of it, all those tools that are beautiful tools, but that investigation of the aspects of the mind and understand what it is the goal, what it is the experience behind all this theory, behind all these words, all this philosophy. It is an experience. We always say that yoga it is 99% of practice, right? So 99 is not that complete. We need 1% of philosophical and theoretical support to make it complete, right? And we're going to have this or from Vedanta's literature, rituals, concepts, traditions, or for Sankhya philosophy, right? Because those two perceptions of interpretations of the Vedas as will be those ones that will complement the yoga. Because if yoga is that 99% practice, if we need to talk about the experience, we need a philosophical support. Does it make sense? And this philosophical support, as we understand yoga, one of the actions of the Hinduism, one of the ways to understood and to practice the Vedas knowledge, right? In the Hinduism, they have 6 darshans, while the one that support philosophically the yoga experience, the more comfortable one will be Sankhya at first, and then we have Vedanta. One is naturalist, another one is spiritualist. They are both complementary. This is important to understand. They complement the practice of yoga, right? Because they are just different perceptions that look for just one thing in the middle, this knowledge of the union with the divine, right? And Patanjali was the first practical codification. That's why it's so beautiful, the approach based on the Sankhya philosophy, a very precise way to understand the nature of the mind, and he suggested a path to reach the goal of that contemplation. And more than this, he described everything can, all the obstacles can block you to reach the path, for you to be able to identify it. He described all the process you're going to cross when you start to do this process of discipline. And everything will going to happen to you, to your way to perceive your nature, right? This way, it is a, a, a path to reach the knowledge that it is inside yourself. That's why there is no way for just to show here outside what it is. I just we're gonna try to bring more and more words in different vocabularies, right? In different literatures. But I believe that just some precise words for open ears with attention like you are right now, can bring a good satiation for the mind, right? To create that, I understand this, to start to get enthusiastic, and curious about it, curious about to look, and actually we all already are here, right? So it's important to bring this beautiful literature of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in this methodology of teaching new teachers, for you to understand the depth of the nature we are working with ourselves. Every day we do the practice of yoga, and with the students and the other practitioners that are guided by us to reach the same experience. That's what we want, right? Because it is part of each one of you, of us. So when we're doing yoga, we are contemplating this. So we need to understand this nature, and for sure it is a work of discipline, and we can extend this work until the infinite, until the end of our lives, the end of these cycles. But once we understand the system, once we understand this nature, right? We already realize, like we are doing now, that we are where it is, right? And this is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. That's why we share, because it is already here, right? Sometimes just need to move a little bit to relieve tensions of the day. Okay. And then boom, contemplation, right? Because this is our nature. This is our nature. And we contemplate that perception with awareness, with our highest consciousness. We can do this in many different ways, many different traditions, practices, methodologies, approaches of it, right? But also for the practice of self-discipline, right? And this is one of the branches of yoga, very strong one. One of the skills of the yogi is to be silent, to be a detective, to investigate the reality. Because this process of concentration, to bring an internal observation, introspection, to concentrate, to contemplate the peace and the state of higher consciousness, guide us to the self-realization that we already are. This is the discipline to be stand in the silence. Is a contemplation, right? But we need to suppress all of this. We need to suppress everything that make us lack this moment, this sacred moment of the presence, right? To be present. Present in Brazil, in Portuguese, is the same word for gifts. So you come and say that to be present is a gift. Right? The present moment, it is a gift. It is where we can contemplate the nature of the self, the true purity of the being, of the personality, right? Is to be genuinely yourself. It's not to change yourself. He never say that you need to be a different person. He never said that, right? No one said that. We are the experience as it is. But we can refine our experience, bring a harmony to our perception, relieve everything that make us suffer, to be free, to be your most pure self, right? And this is a beautiful process when we keep doing, keep doing, keep doing. When you renounce your own wish to become it, that's when you became. That makes sense? Because sometimes also we get so attached to it. To be, I want to be the higher consciousness, I want to be this, right? And we get attached. So relief of that wish to be this consciousness, to reach samadhi, to be in a meditative state. When you detach to it also, then we get the most pure and subtle aspects of be, literally be. With no motive, with no practice. Is the ultimate higher consciousness, right? When it happens, what is the purpose of the suffer? When it happens, what is the purpose of the karma? It disappears. It disappears. This suffer is a perception, a misunderstood perception, a misperception of our reality. Sometimes it can be tough to realize that. I don't mean to don't respect our different states that we cross, right? But it is there. It is there. It is here in the present moment. Also, the contemplation, the ultimate contemplation. So, when we remove all the dirtiness, all these invulcros we created, the knowledge became infinite again. And What rests to be known is insignificant, right? You don't need even to be attached to know more. You already have the knowledge straight for the source, infinite. So all of the influences around, all of the influences surrounded by yourself that will be pushing you to different cycles, to new habits, will disappear too, be obsolete, have no utility. So when everything this start to cess, that contemplation of the purity of the human, then you establish the power of the consciousness in your own nature. This is the description of Kaivalya, when you reach it by the suppression of all the stabilities of the mind proposed for the practice of concentration, meditation, and hyperconsciousness. So you see, it's something here, is a goal to be realized. It's not something that we gonna die to see. Okay, in the next life maybe. No, it is right here, right now, and in the different layers we perceive that, and this is true. We don't need to say, okay, I don't know if it is or not. This doubt, it is an obstacle too. It is just the mind that create this limitation. But we can contemplate, okay, we are not this. We can look at it, this capability to get out of the instability, to detach it, is a constant exercise. Remember that. We can contemplate this goal, but we go back, and then we refine and we go again, and then sometimes we fall and oh my God, I'm suffering and crying. We are humans. We are moving through these emotions too. Forget about this and just be, just cry, just scream too. But try to avoid to create more suffering. Try to avoid to project that suffering. Try to avoid to put yourself in that situation again. You know, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. But we exercise to get out of this. We exercise our state that goes beyond that perception. And this is our process together. This is our process, right? This is a way, and it's beautiful when we look and we see that we are people different histories, different backgrounds, now different language, but we can understand, we can look at this in your own experience and recognize that nature, right? So here we are to refine this process, exercise it. It is something that we can practice. It's not a goal that we need to born again to do it. Not at all. The time of awakening is now. And the practice, it already started. The first Yoga Sutra is Hatha Yoga Nusasana. Now is the teaching of the yoga. Now is the moment to apply, to be the union with the divine. It's not after I tell you what it is. It is now, right? This suppression, it happens now. It is a constant exercise, a constant discipline. And we already have some kind of way that discipline. Sometimes we just don't believe. We create a different belief system that make us look different to ourselves because we are choosing. So we gotta look at this truly as a detective right now. No, because we are putting traps in your own path, right? And this is okay too. So controversial, Gabriel. Come on, stop with this, But this is about to be human, that polarization, and try to find a way in the middle. There is no standard for your own experience. You only can look through yourself, right? And the way Patanjali describes too, that beautiful philosophy, that beautiful approach that I, from my heart, suggest to you to read. That's why I'm preparing a translation for the edition of the Master Jeho's, that it is one of my favorites. I'm preparing a English edition for you guys to read that too, because I never found it online. I just found the other editions, but this one is so beautiful too. I would love to share. So with this, dive into this study is beautiful. This book for sure will bring you a lot of inspiration and a lot of understanding of the experience we are reaching with. And once you have this, you create the concept, you can be more precise to work on that. Once you understand the concept of meditation, okay, meditation is a following step of concentration. So how can you just sit tense and be meditative? You just be in the state of meditation. But you create that state through a concentration. Once you understand those following steps, everything becomes more clear, right? And once you understand a little bit, we get a little bit more familiar with the concept, this ancient concept of the mind, this ancient codification by Patanjali Yoga Sutras. We are more able to identify it within yourselves and be more precise for what we are really doing. It's not only acrobatics with the body, it's within. The work, it is deep, deep, just to be present. And we only can contemplate our consciousness present if we are sharp in the awareness, right? So to start from the mind nowadays with our cell phones, right? With everything we have, or food, or weather right now, the city. This was written back in time, 2,500 years ago. Imagine how it will be applied nowadays, right? It still makes sense for us. It's so beautiful. But now you all are already able to center your attention on this, right? You're already all practitioners. You're already all teachers of yourselves. That's why we are sharing this knowledge here, to just refine our process together in this path of yoga. But you already are this investigator. We all are here, right? So it's more easy for now to you to complement the concepts and dive into the mind process too. But for most of the people, they are just in the automation. This mind cycle we describe, this process, they are just creating thoughts, feeling and go. And when they see they suffer, can be for different ways, eating, creating bad habits. We know, and also us, we can refine this too, right? But most of the people, they don't started this process already. It's okay too. Everyone has your own path. But if someone are looking for this and see the yoga as a path too, we have different tools, thousands of different approaches, right? Thousands of methodologies. What we learn here, Hatha Yoga. To understand Hatha Yoga, we need to be that enthusiastic to investigate the mind. But we understand that the mind is settled, is a powerful tool, but it's hard to reach that. And it's easy to get in those traps, right? It is easy, especially nowadays, right? You gotta put yourself in the right moment, looking now. For sure, the Patanjali codification, it is a powerful tool. But what happens in the Hatha Yoga, the approach changes a little bit. But as I said, to reach the same goal, the ultimate contemplation of the union with the divine, the nature of the true self awareness and consciousness being in the present. How many words? Oh my God, right? But to describe something that can be actually experienced doesn't fit in the words, actually. It's limited. The words are so limited, but can be sacred to guide yourselves into this process, right? So, when we have the mind that create the thoughts, the principle of the mentalism, all the universe started in the mind, creation started in the mind, then the thoughts, then the emotions, then the actions, and then habits. If we do the, the rewind process, we are reaching the same place. Some of the traditions call the mind and the body as a hope. You know a hope? A hope? The mind and the body is like the edges of the hope. Now, one came from the side, they will push the other one too. If you push here, they will follow. They are not separated. There is no separation in the body and mind mechanism. They are one. They are just edges of the same hope. So we can look at this in different layers, right? Psychosomatic disease, for example, right? The mind states can impact a disease in the body, as we see in anxiety or depression. The body literally felt that, right? But see if the mind is linked with the body is linked with the mind. And if the mind can impact the body can also impact the mind. But the mind is hard to touch. The body, we can move, we can align, we can bring prana. This concept is what we're gonna see in more detail in the next class of Hatha Yoga tradition, right? But we already start. We already are moving, breathing, align ourselves, right? So in the next class, I hope the words I bring for you here bring more sense to this too. Okay? Any questions? Anything you want to share? There's a moment. All good? Amazing, amazing. So I really appreciate your attention here, your time present, to hear those words is an honor for me. I hope you bring an inspiration to dive into this study of this beautiful book. That's why still nowadays something that is very important for all the traditions of yoga, and it is so sacred, right, for all the methodologies, because bringing the philosophy behind all the practices we are doing, and very precisely nature of the essence of that reality we are looking for to study, to investigate as yogins. So it's like a light in your path, that bring us 8 beautiful tools to use and to get us inspired in your own path, right? So I hope it brings more, it clarifies, some aspects for you, and appreciate it, your time here. So to finishing this practice today, I invited to just do one thing that can be everything we need, just to do the word on together for 3 times. So just place yourself in a position firm and comfortable, with your spine straight. Close your eyes. Start with a calm and quiet mind. Let's bring the hands connected to the heart. Prayer pose. In your next breath. Thank you all. See you guys soon.